Hurricane Katrina was always one of the most impactful events that happened, in my life. It was one of those things where at the time I'm like, well, I can't go anywhere. I'm stuck. I'm here. You could literally go out and you could see the sky. Even though I stayed on the second floor, you could see the sky from the second floor.
So like the whole top floor was
the whole third floor was gone.
So what did you have after that? Like what was on you, like on your person? What was on you at that time?
I had anything. I literally made it out with a shoebox. When you've hit and lost everything, right? When you've been at a stage where you can lose everything, it actually makes you a bigger risk taker.
Hey, what's up, good people? Welcome to the Student Entrepreneur Show, a talk show that highlights up-and-coming local legends and founders who dare to take a chance on their vision, even the odds stack against them. I'm your host, Zeke Wanganga, and today, you already know, I bring the heat, I bring, the top entrepreneurs in Kansas City. And before we go on, please share, subscribe, let people know where we are. You already know, City Entrepreneur Fired Up, let them know. But today, man, I always bring the top entrepreneurs in KC, and people who are making major moves, who are making impact in the community. Today, my guest he is a successful investor, a business expert. He's been featured on KC Business Journal, Southland News, Channel 41, among many others. When it comes to investing in Kansas City, the person I'm about to bring on, you don't even know, it's about to be on. Help me welcome the founder of Anthony Global Holdings and the executive director of business of ADCKC, Stephen Anthony, a boss man. How you doing, sir?
Appreciate you, man.
How you doing?
I'm great. I'm fantastic.
I love the glasses, man. It's so fashionable.
Oh, man, I appreciate it. Too kind. I don't even know the person you're talking about. You made that introduction. I have no clue who that individual is.
And that was short because there's a whole list. I was like, let me pick a few things because I know there's a whole list, man. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you here.
I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here, man. I appreciate you having me on.
How's your day going so far?
Man, it's busy.
Yeah.
Everything's always busy, man. I tell you, between, running business development for the city, running, of course, Anthony Global, everything, man, everything's just always busy.
Yeah.
So it's always a fun time.
Busy means money though, huh? Ain't it?
Usually. It better be productive. It better be something.
Man, so for those who don't know who Stephen Anthony is, give them just a brief bio of who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so, what a lot of people don't realize, I'm actually originally from Kansas City.
Yes. So, I do know that because I've chatted with you.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know I'm originally from here. So I always tell people I was born in Missouri and raised in Kansas. And so I was born right there off of 63rd and Prospect at Research Hospital.
Okay.
And then I was raised on the KCK side. So I grew up in KCK, moved away to go to undergrad at Dillard University in New Orleans, historically black college down there. Dillard.
My brother actually went there for a couple of years.
Yeah, man. Dillard, fantastic institution.
Yes.
It was a great school for me. Made a lot of lifelong friends. Folks that I still to this day communicate with. Somehow many years later. Great opportunity, man. And so I loved being down there in New Orleans.
Yes.
It was probably one of the best experiences of my life. To grow up down there. And then it's funny because my biological father's side of the family is actually from DC.
Okay.
And so, it was interesting how everything just sort of aligned.
Yeah.
When Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans, it was my last semester of college.
Wow.
My last semester of college. And so I was there when the storm hit. I got out. Obviously, I'm here today, luckily. And so eventually had to get out of there. And ultimately, I relocated to Maryland. So I relocated to Maryland, relocated to where my other side of my family was living. Attended Morgan State for a semester.
Okay.
Eventually just actually spent time living in DC and Maryland for about a year and a half. Got a chance to really spend time with the family out there, but also I remarkably got a job with an investment company. So it was my first opportunity to kind of get into the investment space. Started working with a company called T. Rowe Price.
Okay.
And I told them my story, told them I hadn't graduated from college yet.
Yeah.
And they said, you know what, we're going to take a chance on this guy. And he doesn't have the college degree yet, but we want to see what he can do. We're going to give him an opportunity. And so it was my first opportunity to really get in, learn a lot about the investment world, see how that whole thing checked out. And then ultimately, I made my mother a promise. I said I would, despite me having success, I would eventually go back and spend time and go back to college, especially finish at Dillard. And so I wanted to make sure that I got my degree from Dillard University. And so after a year and a half of living out there, I eventually went back to school. I went back down to Dillard and I finished. And so, got the degree down there. Okay. And then ultimately, I knew that I was going to make my way back out east. I just didn't know how at the time, right? And so, ultimately, I think, it called me. I eventually made my way back out to, back out east. Okay. And then I got into sort of the financial services world as a whole, right? So I just started working in banking, investment world, and I spent, time pretty much all up and down the Eastern Seaboard, just kind of working in different firms. Everywhere from, Pittsburgh, DC, New York. Dang. I was in a multitude of different positions, and my career spanned between wealth management banking, commercial lending, investment banking. I always call myself today, I would call myself a recovering banker, right? Because that's just where, my career started. But it was interesting. And I tell this, this story, for me, the career turned because I was sitting across and I was helping, some of my clients. And one of the things I kept realizing, I was sitting down with people, right? I was like, man, where'd you get your wealth from? And they were just like, Stephen, honestly, it comes from two areas. They said it comes from either owning a part of a business. So they were either investors or they owned it outright. They did one of two of those. And then the other side of it was real estate. And so I said, man, okay, so I'm taking notes and said, ultimately, I don't want to be on this side of the table where I get to help rich people get richer. I want to be on their side of the table. I want to be where somebody's now servicing, me and helping me figure out how to manage my wealth. Right. And so, ultimately, I ended up trying to find ways in which I could do that, leveraging my experience in banking. How could I help people, ultimately get myself on the other side of the coin? And so what ended up happening was while I was trying to figure that out, I just started asking questions. Man, I always tell people this all the time. Entrepreneurs ask questions, especially people who have done it. Keep asking questions. They are more than happy to kind of share their successes and share how they got there. And so I ended up basically asking questions to a lot of the folks that I was dealing with and was like, is there a pain point as you're building your wealth? Is there a pain point that you have? And it was like, one of the things that we think about is we're trying to invest in businesses and real estate. What we realize is the funding. So banks have limits in what they can fund and what they can. And once you've reached that limit, they're not lending any more money to you, right? And so ultimately, and that's fine because they got their regulations and so forth they got to maintain. So it's like we need a source where we can go to, somebody that can actually open us up to all of that. And so I said, okay, I keep track of all of that information. And so I said, well, let me go and talk to a lot of the connections I've made over the years, whether it's banks, whether it's private equity firms, whether it's hedge funds, whoever lends money, insurance company, whoever lends money. Can I go make those connections, talk to those folks and see what they do? And then ultimately they ended up saying, you know what, Stephen, if you bring deal flow to us, we'll fund the deals. So I went back and said, hey, if I could find you capital to help you expand your enterprises, would you do the deals with me? They said, absolutely. And that birthed the commercial finance brokerage firm that I had built. It was originally called Calvert Capital Advisors. I teamed with a business partner who was based out of Chicago. We ended up converting that company. We merged. We became Turning Point Capital. And that was the capital, that was the company that actually really built out, my expertise, built out my wealth, initially. And so, that's really where it started, man.
Man, we're going to break down all the stories bit by bit because you did a whole summary.
My bad.
But first of all, I do like the Cuban links you got on.
Oh, man.
Those are dope. Those are dope. I got to ask you this, though. Who was Stephen? Let's take it, because some people, when they come on the show, they don't expect to go all the way back, but I take all the way back. Who was Stephen in high school?
Wow. So, Stephen was that guy that, everybody was cool with, everyone knew, but didn't know for real. You asked a lot of the classmates and so forth that I went to high school with, Washington High School over in KCK. They were like, yeah, Steven was a cool dude. I was an athlete. I played ball, blew out my knee. So,
Dang.
you know, that ended the whole basketball journey. But, you know, number one thing everybody did know about me even then was Steven knows how to go get paid. You know, he knows how to go get money. And so, you know, that was always, you know, sort of my claim. So even after I blew my knee out, it was, well, how do I go make money? And how do I, you know, position myself for the future to help my family? That's really what it boiled down to. Yeah. So, I mean, that's how most people kind of remember me as, you know.
So you weren't a troublemaker and stuff?
Nah, I wasn't a troublemaker. I was quiet, man. I was quiet. Yeah, I was, you know, I just kind of stayed to myself. I did my thing. I kept my circle small. You know, there was very few people that I considered, you know, my best friends. And so it was, you know, I kept a small circle.
Yeah. What was the move to go to school in, remind me again.
In New Orleans.
New Orleans, yes. What was the move to go to New Orleans?
Yeah, so it was, you know what's funny about that journey, man? It was sight unseen. You know, when I blew my knee out, it was like, okay, Kansas City's in a crazy time. So you got to keep in mind the times that it was, right? This is like the early 2000s. And so Kansas City at this point is considered murder capital, right? On both sides of the state line. It doesn't matter where you are. KCK, KC-Mo, it's considered a murder capital. And so for me, understanding like, hey, I'm trying to provide for my family. I'm trying to make sure I make some things happen. It wasn't advantageous to be close to home at that time, right? Especially as a young black male, it wasn't advantageous. And so when I started looking for opportunities, it was, how do I get as far away from Kansas City so that I don't get wrapped up where I'm either going to be dead or in jail, right? So how do I make sure that I'm in the best position possible so that long term I can take care of my family?
And speaking of, because like, where were you? So you grew up on the east side. You grew up on the east side. Like, was that like physically impacting you, or was it a story where, like, what was that? Was that an immediate threat to you, or? Yeah,
I mean, growing up in KCK, man, it was, you know, it was always challenging because, I mean, if you just look at the pure kind of numbers and demographics, it's one of the poor. It had always been Wyandotte County had always been one of the poorest counties in the metro, right? And so, you know, there just wasn't a whole lot of money there. Wasn't a whole lot of wealth. Wasn't a whole lot of opportunities. You know, for folks that look like me, and so that was impactful, right? I seen many of my family members go to jail, get killed. So it was just a lot of those things that you just kind of saw throughout, and it was like, yeah, I gotta figure out a way to kind of remove myself from the environment.
So you were in college. What did you want to do? Like, what was the major? What did you think you want to do after college and all that?
Yeah, man. You know what? Honestly, I knew I was going to go into business, right? So that I've been an entrepreneur since I was, you know, in grade school, selling comic books and cards to my classmates, right? Like at the end of the day, it was funny. I would be able to go out and buy comic books and cards. I'd buy them for like $1.50, whatever, and then I'd flip them to my classmates for $5.
Wow.
And so that's what I was doing in grade school.
Wow, okay.
And so I knew I was always going to go into business, and I'd always had a mind with numbers. And so that had always been a big thing for me. So the entrepreneurship and business was always something that lived in me. You know, my father that raised me was an entrepreneur, had his own appliance repair business right there in KCK. And so he'd always kind of instilled in us like, hey, you got to be an owner, right? No matter what you do, be an owner, be a boss, no matter what that is, no matter what field you go into, own. And so that always was something that was big with me.
It's very interesting because I've had a lot of entrepreneurs on the show that have said exactly the same thing, where either their dad or their mom was an entrepreneur. They're like, whatever you do, own something. And that is true for me too, because my dad was an entrepreneur. And it kind of like, it brings a whole bigger story of what it means to have entrepreneurship in a family. And like research, like if you've seen it done, you believe it's possible, right?
It does. Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. So talk to us about Hurricane Katrina, your last semester in school. Because, man, when you told me that story, I got chills. Like, I'm like, yo, like you barely made it out.
Right. Yeah, nah, man. It's, you know, it was crazy. Like, I think, you know, for me, Hurricane Katrina was always one of the most impactful events that happened, you know, in my life. You know, I just so happened to, what people failed to realize at the time just about maybe 2 weeks before that, there was another hurricane that had happened. And so a lot of people at the time kept saying, oh, why didn't people just leave? Why didn't they leave? Well, we just dealt with a hurricane 2 weeks before.
Like it's all right.
And it's like, it's going to be cool. We'll be fine. Problem is that one, of course, everybody knows about the levees breaking and so forth. But the issue was Katrina wasn't necessarily supposed to hit New Orleans straight on. It was actually supposed to go further west. And so, I stayed. It was like, I got to go to work. So I'm going to stay and go get this money.
Dang.
So I stayed. And then ultimately what ended up happening is at the last day, the hurricane just decided, we're going to go north. And so it came, instead of going further west, it just went north and it just came straight up, hitting New Orleans straight on. And so it was one of those things where at the time I'm like, well, I can't go anywhere. I'm stuck. I'm here.
Yeah.
And so, everybody always says, what's the one place in your place that you should stay, in the case of some type of storm? The bathroom is the strongest structure. So I went in the bathroom, pulled a blanket in there, slept in the tub. So I slept in the tub that night, as you can kind of hear the storm hitting, right? You could just hear the storm going in. And I ended up just sleeping in the tub that night. And luckily, the next day, the one structure in the entire apartment I was staying in, because I was on the second floor of a 3-story apartment, was the bathroom. The bathroom was the one structure that didn't cave.
Yeah.
So the rest of the house had caved in. The rest of the apartment, rather, had caved in. And you could literally go out and you could see the sky. Even though I stayed on the second floor, you could see the sky from the second floor.
So like the whole top floor was
the whole third floor was gone. And so everybody luckily wasn't on the top floor, but there were some elderly people that was at the floor below. And unfortunately, they didn't make it. And so there was just a lot of that, a lot of confusion, a lot that was going on at the time. And luckily for me, I was a part of the group that just tried to go out and help as many people as possible, before I eventually kind of found my way, for a little bit further west, and got picked up and tried to get out of there.
Wow.
So
what did you have after that? Like, what was on you, like on your person? What was on you at that time?
I had anything. I literally made it out with a shoebox. I made it out with a shoebox. So it was a plastic shoebox was the only thing I made it out of there with. Everything else was gone. So like all of my, and at the time it was interesting because I had fully thought I was moving to New Orleans, right? So like I had my mother send everything, all my stuff, like all my yearbooks, everything from high school.
Yes.
And that's all I had. So all of that was destroyed, clothes was destroyed, TV, everything was destroyed. Damn. All I had was a shoebox. And I remember when I finally got west, I was trying to come home.
Were there Jordans, by the way?
They were not.
Okay, cool. Wait, what was some nice shoes? Was it?
Yeah, they were. I was. I ain't had no money in college. We were broke college students, man.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what kind of shoebox it was.
Did you frame it? You gotta frame that. Put it in a frame somewhere.
I actually still do have the shoebox. It's what I kind of keep stuff in. Sort of my keepsakes. I keep in that box and so forth.
Yes.
But it was literally the only thing that I made it out, and I remember was at the train station because I ended up taking a bus. I took a bus to get from New Orleans to Lafayette, Louisiana, to Houston, Texas, to ultimately get from Houston to Kansas City. And I slept at the bus station in Lafayette, slept at the bus station in Houston, and the only pillow I had was the shoebox. Wow. And so I literally took my shirt off, wrapped it around that, and just slept on that and slept in a little corner until the bus came. And so that was all I had. That's all I made it out with.
Mentally, what was going on though? Mentally for you that day, like what was going on?
Man, it was, honestly, during those times, you just kind of go into survival mode, right? Like whenever you're dealing with that type of trauma, you just go into survival mode and you really don't appreciate exactly what you're dealing with at the time until after the fact. Yeah. And then you sort of realize like, wow, I just really went through that. But at the moment, you're just literally just trying to survive. And so you're figuring out, okay, what's my next move? What do I got to do? Okay, who do I got to call? Can I figure out a way to get, get where, so you just try to figure those things out, in the moment. And then after the fact, it's you finally take a deep breath. And I remember when I finally got time to chill to myself, tears just started rolling down my eyes. And I didn't even know what I was crying for. And I'm not traditionally an emotional person.
Yeah.
And so, but it's just like tears just started coming.
Overwhelming.
Yeah, it became overwhelming, just the entire moment. And then just seeing what other people were going through, right? You had an appreciation for what everybody else was dealing with at that time as well.
Dang. Speak of rock bottom, like zero, like.
Yeah.
And I bet you had plans, like I have one semester done, get a job.
I did.
Then all that happened.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I had an opportunity with a bank down in New Orleans. I actually knew what my life was going to stack up like afterwards, right? I just knew, okay, I'm gonna go work for this bank. I got everything lined up, had my internship, I had a new offer. I knew that was coming right after I finished up. Everything was there. Like Katrina changed the entire trajectory of my life. And so my life was never the same. And it just turned.
Yeah.
Ultimately everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, right? Yeah. And so it turned out for the better because you just figure out ways to pivot.
Because I feel like in situations like that, for me, I've had those situations where I told myself, if I make it out of this, like I'm gonna go all in, regardless of what I go into, right?
Yeah.
I remember once, and this story I'm about to tell is like it was my own fault. I was abducted. It was a whole thing. So when I was, I think it was like probably like 10 or 11 years old.
Yeah.
I used to like bling out and dress up and bling out. And where I grew up in is not a place you bling out. So they spot you out.
Wow.
So I was abducted and I was taken to like this house and then like a lonely freaking place. It was a lot. But in that room, I told myself, God, if you take me out of this, I am gonna be committed. Whatever it is, just gonna be grateful. But tune into my private podcast for more stories. But all that to say, at that moment, I had to commit to myself, like no matter what it is, I'm going after this. It's all in, right?
Absolutely.
For you, what was that like for you after that? Like thinking like, yo, there's no other way down. It's only up.
Yeah. Nah. I mean, what's interesting is I tell my siblings, and they always make fun of me. It's like, dang, Steve, no matter what we're going through, we can't ever beat that, right? We can't beat what you went through with Hurricane Katrina. And I was just like, honestly, when you've hit and lost everything, right? When you've been at a stage where you can lose everything, it actually makes you a bigger risk taker. So you put yourself in a position where it's like, you know what? I know that I can go take risks because I know what it feels like to lose. I know what it feels like to lose everything. But I know that I always have this, and that if I need to, I can always recover, right? So no one can never take this away from you, right? They can never take that away from you. They can take all the material things, you can lose, whatever. They can't never take your mind away. And so you can always recover, you can always bounce back. It's just a matter of will, right? Do you want it bad enough? And so for me, I wanted it bad enough. I was hungry, I lost everything. I didn't have what I needed. I had to figure out how to go win. And that's ultimately what I did. I went out and figured out a way to go win.
Yeah, I got to ask you though, because I know hindsight 2020. Or do you say, I'm glad it happened, or man, that was really tough. I don't want to ever go. I know you don't want to ever go through it again, but what is your appreciation for that moment?
It's a little bit of both. I would say that I appreciate the moment, right? I appreciate it. I would never say I want to go through it again because I'd be stupid to say I'd rather want to experience that again and just everything that I saw. But at the same time, I appreciate going through it. I appreciate having the experience because one, I learned a lot from it. But at the same time, I was also able to inform and to teach others, right? A lot of young people will come to me and be like, hey, look, I came from nothing. And I'm like, you know what, me too. But not only did I come from nothing, I built some and then I lost it. And then I built some more and then I lost it again. And so what I'm able to share with folks is, look, at the end of the day, if you have the will, you can always go get it. There's nothing, the only thing that's keeping you back from success is you, right? And so ultimately that's, I think that's the lesson that it taught me, that I can kind of keep moving. No matter what happens, I can keep it moving.
Yeah, man. Talk to us about, you say you built something, you lost it, built it again, lost it. What are those things that you're talking about?
So, I had built my collegiate career position to be able to do what I need to do. Katrina struck. I came back, I built, I started kind of building my career up at that point. And then, financial challenges hit. Financial challenges hit. I made a couple of bad investments, and those investments didn't pan out. And I ended up losing a lot in the process, right? Being at the fact that you're kind of in the beginning stages, you think you're doing your thing, and then you're like, oh, wow, this investment just lost $150,000. Yeah, that hurts.
Yeah.
And you try to figure out like, okay, what's my next move? I can sit in that for a little bit, and you should, right? You should own those feelings, but you can't stay there. And so I knew for me, I had a family to take care of, so I couldn't stay there. I had to actually go figure out how to go get it and how to build it back. So ultimately, that's exactly what happened. And I'm thankful for the opportunity, the knowledge that I had built up over time, that I was able to go do it.
Dang, man, like. Speak of grit, right? Being able to keep going over and over again, regardless of how many times you try it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's what many people, when it comes to entrepreneurship, a lot of people don't want to get into entrepreneurship because of the fact that you have to be ready to lose.
You do. And businesses, majority of businesses fail, right? A couple of businesses I had failed. They failed historically. At the same time, you gain a lot. I have gained more from the failures of the businesses that I've had, as opposed to lessons I've learned in terms of the businesses that have been successful, right? And so, but those businesses that have failed allowed me to then build a business enterprise that was ultimately successful because I knew how to move. And so I think that's the one thing I won't always want people to take that away. It's like, hey, listen, just because you fail doesn't necessarily make it a failure. It gives you an opportunity to learn and to be able to build the next great enterprise that you have for yourself, as long as you're willing to go get it.
Yeah, as long as you're willing to go get it. Now let me ask you this. So let's fast forward. You are in the financial industry, and then you start asking these questions of, how do I go from working for people who have money to become someone who has money?
Yeah.
Talk to me about the steps you took, the questions you asked, and how were you able to get in those rooms where you were able to put yourself in the right position to become an investor as opposed to be the one managing investments?
Yeah, no. So, my business partner and I, we turned around and, we were brokering a ton of commercial finance deals, right? So they were both on the business side and on the commercial real estate side. And we focused primarily on offices and multifamily and apartment complexes in terms of financing those opportunities. And then from a business perspective, we was financing everything across the board, from healthcare to manufacturing facilities to, all these, to retail operations. We were financing all of those. And then what we realized in the middle of all of that, we ended up saying, okay, instead of actually sending this deal out to somebody, we've now acquired enough money, within our firm to actually then invest directly ourselves, right? And so instead of that company going to XYZ company looking for, some funding, we say, you know what? You give us 20% equity, we'll put the money up. And not only will we put the money up, but then we'll work with you directly to whatever our expertise is. My business partner was really good from a logistics and operations standpoint. And I was really good at being able to kind of deal make and figure out ways to structure things financially for companies. And so we said, we'll come in as advisors on top of the equity that we give you. People took the deals. And so we ended up acquiring interest in a number of different, business opportunities, as well as commercial real estate. And so it was just kind of finding an opportunity, finding a gap that was out in the market, right? Honing in on that gap and then making ourselves invaluable, making ourselves to the point where people automatically came to us first. And so it was sweet because, we always got first look at the deals. And so we then made the decision, okay, this one looks good. We kind of cherry picked, right? We got an opportunity to sort of cherry pick the deals, the best deals. And was like, we want to invest in that one. Or we'll go ahead and broker that one out. And so, especially ones that were in our sweet spot of industries that we did really well in. And so we were able to figure that out over time, man. And we built the company. It was doing, at its peak, it was doing about $4 million in revenue.
Wow.
And so, we was able to take that opportunity and just kind of build out from there.
Man. So when it comes to investing in businesses, a lot of people don't have success in that, because that's where most people decide to go into real estate, because that's a more safer option.
Yeah.
And I know you also do real estate, but
sure.
In terms of some failures you had investing in businesses, what are some of the biggest failures you had that you learned from and you were able to use going forward in your new investments?
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, I'd say this to my staff over at AGH. I say, honestly, there really isn't a whole lot of difference between investing in businesses and investing in real estate. Either one are assets, and either one, if you apply the same principles to whichever way that you particularly like to invest, you can apply them to both sides of the coin, right? It's just a matter of finding your process, and then maintaining your process to something that's repeatable every single time. And so whether it's a business, whether it's real estate, you're going to analyze the numbers. The numbers will look different because it's a different asset, but you're going to analyze the numbers pretty much the exact same way, right? You'll be able to determine, what makes a good investment and what makes a not so good investment. Yeah. And so, I think you always look for ways to structure deals to your advantage as an investor, right? And I think that's, some entrepreneurs, especially when they're looking for investment and they're going to investors, they tend to lose sight of that, and they get upset because investors are kind of, like, oh, it's me. They're always going to structure the deal to be in their best interest, right? Because it's their capital. And so, you just have to kind of keep that in mind. But I think, when you're analyzing deals on, no matter what the asset is, I always tell people, no matter whether it's real estate, whether it's a mutual fund, whether it's stocks, bonds, whatever, a business directly, no matter how you're analyzing that deal, you're going to be able to utilize financial statements because they tell the story. That's one thing I feel like I'm somebody that loves reading financial statements. I may be a geek and a nerd at some of that stuff, man, but I love reading financial statements because they really do tell a story. And
I think that's where the bulk of the issue is. Most people don't like to read the financial statements.
I know.
That's that's where your solution comes in. It's like people don't like to read that.
Yeah.
Now, the next question I'm going to ask you is this. Why do you think most businesses don't get funded?
I think it's to that same point, man. People don't understand their financials. They don't understand it to the point where you should be able to read your financials at the drop of a hat. You know what I'm saying? And you should be able to use that to tell the story of why your business is financially viable or could be financially viable. If you're trying to go gather money from somebody, you need to be able to take the numbers to tell the story of why I should invest with you. Because at the end of the day, I'm just trying to get my money back at minimum, right? I want my money back at minimum. And at the most, I want this certain rate of return that I want to. And so if you can prove the case that hey, look, this is how you can get your money back. This is also how you will make the return that you're looking for. It's a lot easier to get funded. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with that. They struggle with telling the financial part of their story. They're very good at telling sort of the in the air, why my business is so great and why it's like nothing you've ever seen before, right? Which everybody says that.
Exactly.
Everybody thinks that about their business. But telling the financial story of your business, right? Why is my business financially viable and you should make that investment into it because it's going to get the rate of return that you're ultimately looking for. That part a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. And if they become really, really good at that, I can almost guarantee you there's money out there. Almost guarantee.
Wow. I mean, that's a whole note for myself. Hopefully everyone's taking a note, right? Because I'm like, yeah, I'm about to get on those numbers. From your, EDC perspective of things in Kansas City, do you think there's enough funded for entrepreneurs? Or do you think the city needs to do more in terms of funding? Or is there something missing in between?
Yeah, I think Kansas City is unique in the sense that it has traditionally been a smaller city. It is now a city that has grown by leaps and bounds. There's a lot of fantastic, really good things happening. And in the midst of it, there's going to be growing pains. And I think Kansas City has a goal of wanting to be the most entrepreneurial city in the country, but still trying to figure out what exactly does that look like, right? Because you still have a very traditional mindset as it pertains to risk taking, and that's at all stages of the city, right? No matter what level it is, business, civic, government, no matter what level it is, innovation isn't, people's first language here. And so it's a matter of educating people. And then as the city is growing, you'll continue to have more people who will be more comfortable with innovation, more comfortable with risk taking, and you'll see the doors sort of open up a bit towards funding opportunities for small, medium, and small, medium businesses primarily. You'll see those doors start to open up. But I just tell people not to get discouraged at it. Just understand that there's growing pains, right? There's growing pains involved. And so at the current stage, yeah, we probably don't have the level of funding that, that most people will be okay with. But at the same time, I understand that it's absolutely having conversations like the conversations that you lead across the city, man. It's important because people need to understand just how real it is. And then our growth will then cater to the opportunities that business can get the funding that they're looking for.
And I mean, I like that you touched on the traditional mindset of Kansas City and Missouri as a whole, because I've seen that has been in, like you said, in different sectors. It's been the case when it comes to innovation, where there's a traditional way of doing things that they're used to.
Sure.
And it's hard to be able to break into something new that will be viable.
Absolutely.
If you give it 10 years.
Yep, that's absolutely the case, man. You're gonna have a lot of that, like I said, throughout all the different aspects of the city. And so, I think that, we have intelligent, super smart folks that are doing some fantastic things out here. We have great entrepreneur support organizations. We have, platforms like yours that are out here kind of leading the charge in terms of being able to tell the stories. And I just think that we need to continue to elevate that. And I think as we continue to do that, and then we continue to see people, as the city grows, we'll see more people come here with a non-traditionalist mentality, more of a growth mindset, and say, you know what, I'm willing to take a shot on some of these businesses. I'm willing to take a shot in making sure that, these businesses can get the funding and the growth that they deserve. So yeah, it's coming.
On the other side of things, and I know that you've spoken on this a couple of times, which is when it comes to the sports, when it comes to the draft that came here as being a marketing tool.
Sure.
From your own perspective and experience, how do you think the city can better take advantage of all this hype?
Yeah.
For our boost for entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think it's we need to have more voices at the table, right? I think at the end of the day, we sometimes like to rely solely on our elected officials to kind of make all the decisions, and ultimately they don't know it all, and nor should they, right? They know their lane, they're fantastic at it. But we need more people at the table that, there's a lot of smart people that can be at the table, that can be a part of those conversations and really figure out ways for us to capitalize on these great marketing opportunities, right? The draft was a great example. It was great,
yes. But
I think that there was a misconception about what exactly it was going to do.
Yes, that's true.
And so I think that, yes, there are some businesses that performed pretty well. There are a great majority who didn't. And I think that was part of like, oh, shoot, wait, we realized that somebody didn't really kind of show us how this was going to work. I was having a conversation with someone the other day and realized, like, you know what? Remember back in the day when we used to throw parties and people would pass out flyers, right? You had a street team. You had a street team that would pass out flyers. True. It was like, why did nobody bring that kind of idea to the table? Because you knew the majority of the population was going to be right there at the center. You needed a street team that could help tell people to drive traffic to your particular part of town, right? Whether it's the River Market, whether it's the plaza, wherever, you needed someone to kind of help move people from there to there. And maybe even at the end of the day, it's like, hey, look, I got a flyer for you. Matter of fact, I also got a shuttle that'll take 10 folks at a time and take 10 people at a time over to this other location. You know what I mean? And so it's that type of innovation, that type of ingenuity that, folks can kind of work towards. But I think we need more people at the table that can help kind of bring those ideas up for them, right?
I mean, in that same light, though, I want to bring up the east side, right? Because I know that's a whole challenge when it comes to transportation or getting people from, that side. Like, I feel like a lot of things are happening in the center. Yeah. But, what do you think in terms of being able to incorporate people who live on the east side, who build business on the east side? Is there a way, do you think there's a disconnect there, or do you think there's a solution to bringing those things together? Yeah, no, I think it's the same thing. I think it's the same thing, making sure that those voices are at the table. There's assets over on the east side too. True. I don't want to, act like there's not great things. I think people would need to be realistic in terms of where the assets are and where the opportunities are. But there are assets on the other side of town, and I think
Combine is a great example, right? You have Combine over there. And, you know, if you find out ways, you bring the owners there to say, oh, you know what, there's an event that's going on over here, or Soiree has an event that's happening, right? At the end of the day, how do we get people from point A to point B? How do we make sure that we're highlighting and not just putting a sign up, you know, outside the door, because who's going to see that sign?
Yeah, only people who live around there.
Exactly. And so you need to figure out ways to actually be able to move people. Now, whether you know, maybe do you incorporate government to help kind of do that and be intentional about it? Sure, that's a component of it. But I think the private sector is absolutely a piece of that as well, right? You find folks that actually have, you know, transportation. There's local transportation entrepreneurs out here as well that can figure out ways to move people from point A to point B, and we just contract with them to make that happen. And so there's just different ways, and I just thought of that off the top of my head, by the way. So you know, there's different ways that we can do that to make sure that we incorporate, you know, development across the city, right? No matter where it's at.
And I mean, something you mentioned, I think it was the last panel, is partnerships, collaborations.
Yeah.
I think collaborations play a huge part of bringing two sides of the city that might never meet, but have them market each other's stuff on both sides of the city. Because that's how you bring people to wherever you are. Because the harder you are Pawn Light, now they're gonna go on the east side and go and patronize you. You know, so like having those strategic partnerships that help everyone, as opposed to saying, oh, it's only happening on that side. It's never gonna come over here.
That's real talk. I think, you know, even as an entrepreneurial community, we got to patronize each other. Right? We got to patronize each other. We got to support one another, no matter what part of the city you're in. You know, whether it's north, south, east, wherever, you know, you got to be able to say, you know what, dang, all right, cool. I like what you're doing over here. Let me go ahead and send some of my clients or my customers, you know, over there at certain times. You know what I mean? And so, you know, if I have a different kind of restaurant that, you know, meets a different kind of need, I serve Thai food, I can send them to the soul food spot or over on the other side, right? Because, you know, we're different types. And so, you know, I think that there's a way for us to do better in terms of our collaboration, our partnership, supporting one another, and making sure, you know, that everybody can eat. You know, it's absolutely available.
Let's shift gears a little bit. Business development, right? On the business side of things, I know you talked about finances being very essential for business to be able to get funding or succeed. What is something else you think a business needs to be successful?
I think, you know, for a plug in terms of, you know, what Anthony Global, and one of the things that, you know, we focus on helping businesses in a couple of different areas, right? My team at AGH focuses around financial management analysis, strategic business development, and in commercial financing. We focus on those three things because we think those are the three essential things that businesses need in order to survive and to thrive, right? And so understanding your financials, which we talked about, strategic business development, how am I driving revenue? What is a proven revenue, or what is a revenue strategy for my business? Right? That's the part I think that folks kind of find, they do it a little bit, but they don't keep refining that. They don't keep figuring out new ways to kind of tweak that, you know, to figure out maybe ways to diversify your revenue streams.
Is there tools to do that, or what would you advise?
I would advise, you know, getting in touch with an advisor that, you know, helps you kind of develop that. You know what I'm saying? I think that there's, you know, certainly folks out here that'll work in that way. And then also too, you know, I get it. Most entrepreneurs are busy working in their businesses instead of working on their businesses. And so sometimes you just need the assistance from somewhere else. But I think there are certainly, you know, folks out here that can help you do it. There's organizations that can help you do it. Some, you know, some with a cost, some that don't have a cost. So I think that, you know, just got to look for the avenue and the tools that'll help you kind of build out.
The third thing, I cut you off. What was the third thing?
And the third thing is, of course, commercial financing. So the third thing is, how do I access capital, right? And so once you've learned exactly how to read your financials, how to understand your financials, how to build out a proven revenue strategy model, and then the last part is, okay, let me go get money. Whatever that looks like, right? Whether it's debt or equity, let me go get capital.
Man, I think what you said, I think a lot of people who are successful in business say the same thing. A lot of entrepreneurs work in the business and not on the business. And I think that separates corporations from small businesses.
Absolutely.
Right, because we are busy being the traffic traffic person and being the driver, and also being the one cleaning the road out at the same time.
Yeah.
Where we can be able to pay people to do all those things, so we can be able to have a holistic view of what's going on.
100%. And I learned my stuff the hard way, man. I learned it the hard way. Like I said, my father was an entrepreneur. The challenge, though, is that he was hustling in his business. He wasn't building a business, right? And so the business really relied on him in order to thrive. And so, unfortunately, because of that, our family suffered when he injured himself. And so, he was delivering a refrigerator one day. He had my mother helping him out. Unfortunately, the refrigerator slipped. It fell on him. It landed on his back. And he injured himself, right? And he didn't have health insurance. And so because of that, he was out, right? So then income dropped, because that was the income. There was no income coming in, right? And so the rest of us had to figure out ways in which to support the family. And so I think that's ultimately the lesson that I learned, that I try to educate folks on. You know what I'm saying? How to build, like you said, how do you build a business that extends beyond just you?
Now, on the same light though, team, because you have to build a team to be able to help you grow as a business.
Yep.
What do you look for in building a team, or who do you look for? What is the most important thing for you when you're trying to build a team of people who are going to help you get to the next level?
Yeah, I think I'm always looking for folks with diverse skill sets. So, I know what I do very well, right? And I will tell people all day long, I don't do marketing. I don't do, operations. I am a finance guy. I'm very good at that. I know how to structure deals from a financial standpoint. And so I'm always very focused on finding folks with diverse skill sets, people that do something different than I do. And hopefully they do what they do better than what I do. And so that's really the first step, right? Okay. And then after that, it's how bad do you want it? I like people that are hungry. I like people that really want success. I like people that don't want just anything handed to them. I have folks that have worked for me for a number of years. And it's because they were hungry. They wanted to understand, how did I get to my level of success? And they wanted to figure out how to do it for themselves. And I can appreciate that mindset, right? So I need people that diverse skill sets, that are hungry, ambitious, that are driven. And then just folks that are, certainly coachable, people that are coachable, people that are willing to say, you know what, I don't know it all. Stephen, you certainly have a level that, I want to learn from, and I'm willing to kind of pivot and help, kind of refine my own tools and skill set. And so, those are the three things that I really look for and folks that I look to partner with or bring on board my organization.
So I know a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners who are listening today, I know myself, I have a challenge with this, which is we know that people want to have one on a team, but sometimes the way to let people go is the hardest thing. For you, have you had those situations, or how are you able to let people go in a way that, if you see they don't fit what you're looking for, how do you do that?
Yeah, you know what? It's crazy, because I've done it in a couple of different ways. I've had to let employees go. I've also had to let business relationships and business partnerships go, right? And that can be some of the toughest things to have to kind of part ways with, if it doesn't align with, what you've sort of laid out, and maybe somebody's way of doing business isn't the way that you do business. And I think, ultimately it's a matter of just being firm and being upfront and having that conversation. I also want to say that most people, it's not a matter of being inflexible, because you definitely want to make sure that you have a certain level of flexibility and understanding different viewpoints. Because it's not as if the problem with most entrepreneurs, the reason why they're letting folks go because they don't meet certain values, is because I don't accept certain different viewpoints than my own, right? I don't want a team full of yes people, right? I want someone who will come with an actual argument that is valid, that is backed up with, with certain bullet points, that I can say, you know what? Okay, cool. I see that. I see, that's different than the way I would have looked at it, but I can appreciate it. And so those are the folks that you want to have on your team, and you want to keep them around. Yeah. Now, there's some people that's just going to argue and say no to say no. I can't rock with that. But I can definitely rock with folks that are certainly, they want to grow, they want to learn. They just may think a little bit differently than myself, and I can appreciate it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, most times you just have to do it. It's one of those, I forget what it's called, like the unhealthy toenail or something. You got to cut off. You just got to do it. It hurts, but at some point it has to happen, right?
You do. Absolutely.
Let me ask you this, though. We all know that entrepreneurship, ownership is the way to be, financially, I would say, financially free. Why do you think most people, if it's the way, why do you think most people don't engage in entrepreneurship?
You know what? And I've said this before in the past, everybody's not built to be an entrepreneur. Everybody's not, but everybody can own. So while you may not be the person that, open up your own shop and do your own thing and hire a bunch of people, that may not be for you. But the wealthy people that I sat across the table from, they were all owners. They all own something, right? Whether it's you making an investment into a business, you're an owner. And I think most people don't look at it that way, right? If you buy stock, you're an owner. You're not an operating owner, but you're an owner. And so I think that, people just need to reimagine it and look at it a little bit differently. So while we may not all be entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurship isn't for everybody, everybody can own. Everybody can have a piece of something. Everybody can begin to build wealth in a way that that is conducive to taking care of and creating a legacy for them and their families. You know what I mean? And so I think that, that's just a different way of kind of looking at it for a lot of us.
Yeah. It gives me, whenever you speak, it gives me On Your Leisure. On Your Leisure?
I do. That is one of my favorite podcasts.
It gives me the vibe. That's the whole vibe I always get, because I'm like, it gives me investment perspective. Like what you just said is so profound, even though it was so simple, but it's so profound in so many different ways. Just because the fact that you don't have to start running a business, you can be an investor.
Absolutely.
10%, 2%, 5%, 8%. Multiply that by 5 years. That's a whole bunch of money coming into your pocket.
A whole bunch of money. I tell people all the time, man, listen, I'd rather own 20% of $100 million enterprise than to own 100% of nothing. I'd rather do it, right? I don't have to be the biggest piece in the pie, right? If I got a small piece of something that's about to be huge, I'm gonna do just fine.
See, my teacher in high school used to say, common sense is not common. What you just said is common sense, but it's not common in reality.
That's true.
But let me ask you this. As entrepreneurs, we go through seasons where we don't want to keep going. We want to quit because it's been too hard. Yeah. We want to throw in the towel. How do you pivot in those times?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I've had them too. I get them all the time, right? Some days are better than others, and there are days that are like, man, this is dragging. Yeah. I can't keep pushing this. But at the end of the day, ultimately, what you have your North Star, whatever that is, everybody has what their ultimate goal looks like. Yes. So for me, it was, I wanted to be able to put my name amongst the greats, right? That was where my North Star was at one point. And now it's at a place where I want to create a legacy. Yeah. I want to be able to, folks, what am I going to be remembered by, right? When people hear Stephen Anthony, when they hear the name, I want them to be able to think about something that will last. Yes. Right. And so that's really what I'm building at this stage. But yeah, I feel like people underestimate themselves. I think people tend to set the bar pretty low, but I want to compete with the biggest players at the table. I had there was a mentor of mine in DC. He said, you know what? He said, Stephen, listen, there are a lot of people in my age bracket that I can kind of put myself in the conversation with, right? He said, there's the Bill Gates. There's, Robert Smith is in that conversation. You have all of these folks that are sort of around the same age bracket. He said, but how many of you in your age bracket can you actually put yourself that is your competition? How many is there? How many of you are in the same conversation with the Zuckerbergs, with the Google guys, with all these other folks? How many of you are in those same conversations? And I said, dang, you know what? There's maybe a handful, maybe 2 or 3. Yeah. LeBron. Yeah. And so I said, you know what? That's my goal. That's what I'm aspiring to. So that you put my name next to those billionaires that are in that same bracket, right? And so that's really where I think about in terms of being able to have that kind of impact. Because whatever the next generation is going to look, they're going to look for us to kind of set the standard. And so we need to be able to raise the bar a bit. Stop feeding on the low hanging fruit and go raise the bar. That's what it's about.
My brain is just going, just like there's a bunch of like,
oh man,
green light just going in my like, whoa, that was beautiful. Speaking of thinking of failing or quitting, literally when you said it's day by day. For me, it's day by day. Yesterday, it's funny because yesterday I posted the episode. I post every Thursday. I'm like, why are people not reacting to as much as I wanted?
Right.
Man, why am I doing this? I should quit. But here I am today. We're doing an episode back at it because there's that star you're looking at.
Absolutely.
We're trying to be able to build it, something legacy. It's not just the one click or the two click. It's about building something that people remember when you're not there. Right?
Yeah. Now, think about it like this. When I created my commercial finance firm, man, listen, I quit my job. My father that raised me, the man that was an entrepreneur, he passed away. He passed away from cancer. So he was diagnosed in March of 2014. Passed away in August of 2014, actually on the very same day that Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans. I quit my job literally 3 weeks after that and said, because the last conversation I had with him was, hey, Pop, listen, I'm scared. I don't know about jumping out there and doing this thing. I'm going to leave a 6-figure job and I'm about to jump out there and run this company and do this full time. He said, look, you was never meant to work for someone for your whole life. You was meant to be impactful. And that was it. And so when he passed, I said, all right, well, that's I'm going to do what I got to do. I'm going to jump out there and I'm going to figure it out. But my first deal failed. My first commercial finance deal failed. I thought it was going to get to the finish line. I had been broke for 4 or 5 months. And the deal fell through.
Wow.
And I was like, what am I do? I got to take care of a family. How am I going to make this? How am I going to make this work?
Yeah.
And ultimately, I stayed in it. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, you can't allow failure to dictate your future, right?
Yes.
You got to keep pushing. And so 6 months later after that was my biggest deal, was enough to pay for me to live an entire year.
Wow.
And so, it's just things like that, man. It's a lot of time that failure, that success is right on the other side. And if you just keep pushing, you'll hit that. You'll hit that. So, man, I just, I keep you encouraged and just keep pushing it, man, because this right here, that success is right on the other side.
I mean, I definitely hear you. I think it was a couple of days ago, I had a panel here at Keystone and we're talking about like just failures and stuff. And what I've noticed in life is whenever things are not going your way, the biggest breakthrough is about to happen.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in that.
It's like, in my head, I have a picture of this mountain where the sun is on the other side of the mountain, but on the side you are at, it's dark. So you're thinking there's no sun anywhere. But once you get over that mountain, it's green pasture on the other side.
Right.
And then you're like, wow, there's something that's happened to me so good, But
it's crazy.
Never forget those times when
always
it's like a blank, nothing is going on.
Yeah.
And it's like everything's because I've had those seasons, and I have people who in my life were having the season where they're like, man, I'm gonna don't quit.
Yep. That's, there's an old story that people talk about during the gold rush. That there was folks that were they were digging, they were having no success, right? And they was going broke. Because they kept buying the tools, they kept going looking for gold, they kept digging for gold. And then 99% of the people quit and said, you know what, I'm dropping these tools, I'm out. I'm going back east. Right? Folks that kept digging, 1% that kept digging, right after everybody quit, they struck gold. Wow. And it's just an example of the ability to kind of keep pushing. You know what I'm saying? Because like you said, it's literally right on the other side. And so if you could just keep that fortitude and keep it going, I can almost guarantee you.
Yeah. I don't know if it's Carnegie, I'm not sure, but there's a story that goes, I think it's actually a book called 3 Feet from Gold.
Yes.
So basically,
that's where it comes from.
It's like I think he was like literally 3 feet from gold, and he's like, yeah, I'm packing up. I left. Yep. And he sold the land to someone else.
Yep.
And it was like 3 feet from where he was digging.
And the guy came in, bought it, struck gold.
And he was like, so after that happened to him, he knew that whatever he was going to go into, he was going to keep through it till the end, regardless of what happens.
Absolutely.
But man, we're towards the end of the show, man. I'm so inspired. I'm literally fired up. Pun intended. But let me ask you this. I know you've given us an investment, advice in the sense that you can invest 10% of 100 million is better than 100% of nothing, right?
Right.
Is there another investment tip you want to give to people who are watching today that would help them?
I think the biggest tip for me is always been, making sure that you're creating diversified revenue streams, right? If just looking for ways in which you can diversify your opportunities.
Yes.
No matter what that looks like, no matter what your lane is, just diversify your opportunities. Because when one thing is not doing so well, another part of your business could absolutely be building out. And so I think that was really what created an opportunity for me, was to diversify our revenue streams. So when I bought the business out from my business partner, I went from purely just doing commercial financing to actually investing directly into deals. And on top of that, also adding the additional layers of consulting or advisory work, financial management analysis, strategic business development. So I added those pieces after he got out of the business. And it's just merely a means of diversifying. Yeah. And so making sure that folks diversify your revenue streams, find additional opportunities that are out there. And so when one aspect is not doing so well, you always got something to fall back on.
Second to the last question, what are some resources you give to entrepreneurs who are watching today who are looking for either funding or any type of resource that you can point them to go here or go there?
Yeah, no, I think, what, you can always reach out to your local entrepreneur support organizations. There's a host of them. Folks at Porterhouse are doing some fantastic things. Dan and Sharon, they're doing great things over there. You have, Gift, KC Gift is doing some fantastic thing, and I love the work that Brandon's doing. So there's a lot of entrepreneur support organizations that you can reach out to and find additional resources. Also look at your local SBA. You know what I'm saying? Okay. There's a lot of stuff that the new SBA director, Guzman, that she's doing, that's been implementing, that really works towards helping small businesses. And just take a look at what's happening on that front, making it easier for folks to be able to get access to capital. I think they just came out with some new stuff here recently. There's just a ton of resources here. I think that sometimes we can get overwhelmed with the amount of information that's out there. And so if you just need to kind of hit up somebody, you can hit up the EDC and talk to some of the business development officers that are part of my team. They'll certainly kind of help you get directed in the right way, connected to some resources. So, there's just a ton of opportunities for folks to touch base with somebody.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because KC is such a small place that the names you mentioned, I know all of them.
Right.
And it's like if you network in the right places, you get the solutions you need. Like, get the questions asked, you get what you need if you are networking where you're supposed to be networking.
Yes, absolutely.
Final question from me is this. What is one advice you've gotten from somewhere or from someone who has really helped you become who you are today, and you keep holding on to that and keep going?
I have the prayer of serenity, and it has always been something that I've kind of kept, right? So just, it's granting me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, to the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that that's always been impactful for me, is because, one, you understand exactly what works for you. You understand, hey, look, I need a little bit of extra something to keep pushing, even when I want to give up. And then the wisdom to understand when I need to pivot, right? When I need to drop something that's no longer working, and then to move on to something else. And so that's always, whether it's my personal life, whether it's business, that's always been something I've carried with me throughout. And I keep that as a namesake to me, because it's tattooed on my left arm. So
Wow, man. Thank you so much, Stephen, for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing. Man, each time I sit with you, I learn something new. Even before the show started, I came to him like, man, I want to do this thing, but I don't know how I'm going to do it. He gave me all these tips. I took that and I ran with it. So it's always, an honor to sit with you and chat, because you're like a bigger brother to me. I always listen to whatever you say, because I know that it's come from a place, of just love.
Always.
Just, being able to share. So thank you for saying yes to come on the show.
I appreciate you.
All you do for Kansas City.
Man, I appreciate you. I appreciate you, Zeke. I appreciate the platform you building out, man. I just want to continue to always keep you encouraged. So, man, just keep up the work, man. Keep doing what you're doing, man. You're doing some awesome stuff.
Thank you. For those who want to reach out to you or EDSKC, or want to be able to, get that investment from Anthony Global Holdings, how can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. Folks will feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's usually probably the best way for folks to connect with me. I have no other social media. So people always talk about that.
You ain't got no TikTok?
I have no TikTok, no Instagram, no Facebook. I don't even know what any of that looks like.
But Snapchat?
No Snapchat. I don't even know what that is. But no, LinkedIn. Folks, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. They can always, go to the website at EDC. I'm right there on one of those pages there.
Sweet.
Feel free to, Anthony Global, AGHoldings Inc.com. Feel free to go through there. You'll always find information about me.
Sweet. Thank you, Steve, for coming on the show.
Appreciate
you. For those of you who are watching from home, you know what to do, man. Subscribe, like, share. Let people know we are here in KC, Fired Up Studios, City Entrepreneur. Go share, go like, go listen. And as usual, as I always say, stay fired up, don't give up, and wait. It's Zeke Wangang. You already know I'm the host. I'll see you in this episode. Bye-bye for now. To see how our city's entrepreneurs do what they do, tune in to City Entrepreneur on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Episodes drop every Thursday.